Just want to point out that regarding, doing the sang, of course, traditionally it's the powdered incense, making a lot of smoke. But many of us, don't necessarily live in environments where that is practical. Practical here, what I mean is we don't want practical to become kind of like knowingly or unknowingly, to become like doing things just because it's the easiest way of doing it. Because if we feed that attitude, doing it because it's the easiest way, in other words, this all-powerful word, convenience. If we do something or don't do something, primarily guided by convenience, then it's going to be very hard, to do what is ultimately very inconvenient, which is to separate ourselves from the mental defilements. Even though mental defilements, we see the damage they do, and so we definitely don't like it, when mental defilements show the extent of the damage that they do. But in order to remove them, convenience is not going to work, right? Because you're doing that which is very inconvenient insofar as threatening the mental defilements. So what I mean by practical is consideration towards the people whom you live with. They may or may not accept or like so much smoke smoking up the house. You should not insist, oh, I have to do this. This is my practice. This is my religion. Don't do that. That's unnecessary. Including if you live in apartments, neighbors complain. Then no need, because the main practice is the 10 virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues. Put more effort into that rather than effort in annoying your neighbors because I need to ring bells, I need to beat drums, I need to burn incense. Those are secondary. So when I say not practical, I mean if it is going to cause, disruption in the lives of people around you, then think, is this directly related to the training in avoiding 10 non-virtues? Then even if it inconveniences others, we have to find ways to keep to that. I have to avoid the 10 non-virtues. I don't know, some of us may grow up in a family of butchers, have to kill, as livelihood. Then in that case, even if it inconveniences them, you might have to make the choice of doing that. But other than that, let our focus be clear on, mainly what we have to practice, no matter what the circumstance, and then what we can adjust accordingly, according to conditions. So there's also this phrase called to accord with conditions. To know when to accord with conditions and to serve sentient beings. And that is one of the vows of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. To serve sentient beings and to accord with conditions. Then on the other hand, do not give, even a centimeter or a fraction of a centimeter to the afflictions, to the mental defilements. So one place needs to be really tough. Really tough, really strict. Other places needs to be relaxed and flexible. So knowing where and when, is part and parcel of what we have to train in, what we have to be good at. Yeah. So this is something important. Yeah. So then specifically, like in sang, if you're in a situation where, making a lot of noise, burning powdered incense is impractical, along the lines of how I define impractical, then even just a little segment of incense, a little piece, like stick incense. And if you can, you look for the stick incense that has a higher amount of like juniper, cedar, pine, because these are traditional substances, traditional things that are burnt for cleansing. Sometimes incense is burnt as an offering. Here, mainly in the sang, incense is burnt as cleansing, also as offering, but as cleansing. So then the higher the juniper or the pine, coniferous, having that kind of lemony, even, scent, that is said to have the interdependence related to cleansing, to cleaning. So just small stick of incense, even one segment of that incense this much burned, that is enough. I even suggested, like, if even that, is kind of, you have people in your household that has, very sensitive to smoke, right? Then you buy a spray can with drops of like juniper berry essence, essential oil. Mix it into a bottle. So then when it comes to do this, you just spray, It's not exactly cleansing by smoke. It becomes now cleansing by water. But you just think, oh, this is like the smoke, like this. It's not really smoke, right? It's the scent, that cleanse. So you just squirt, and do the cleanse. Yeah? So some possibilities. Yeah? So now we start. Oh wait, where's my book? Hold on. Yeah, so page 99. Yeah, so here, right? Kyoba Jikten Sumgön says, no matter what the teachings, no matter how vast all the teachings, when you distill them, it's down to 2 points. Knowing suffering and knowing the cessation of suffering. Knowing suffering and then knowing the cessation of suffering. Then particularly among the topic of knowing suffering, knowing the cause of suffering, elsewhere in the Four Noble Truths, the cause of suffering is identified as grasping. Here, Kyoba Rinpoche identifies samskara, mental formations, more, I think, along the lines of looking at it more in the context, I believe, of someone who is like training his or her own mind, and pointing out that at the point where stories begin to proliferate, whenever sight, sound, smell, taste, touch come into contact with sense objects, in the first moment is Vedana, which is translated as feeling or sensation, and the sensation that immediately arises upon first moment of contact is a sensation of either painful, pleasurable, or neutral. In the next moment is a recognition or the perception of, oh, that's painful. And so with regards to painful, dislike. With regard to pleasurable, like. With regards to neutral sensation, don't care. Either way. Those two, right? At those 2 points, it's not so easy to cut. Not so easy to stop the proliferation. But at the third moment, where mental formations come. Now after either you think it's painful and therefore I dislike, or pleasurable, therefore I like, then the story starts. There, it says, can you see all these mental formations and cut that, abandon that, relinquish that. So now, Kyopa says, as for abandoning or relinquishing samsara, there are 2 ways, through force and through realization. Now, to clarify, I know all of you already know this, but somehow we are also infected by some wrong views. We think to abandon samsara means to abandon this world. And some of us think, oh, what if, how irresponsible, you abandon this world. Or sometimes even, those teachings on the faults of samsara. We think, Buddha is teaching us to hate this world. Or to give up on this world. No. Giving up samsara is giving up the confusion that gives rise to more confusion. Samsara is not a place. Samsara is a state of being. Nirvana is not a place. Nirvana is a state of being. Right now, the state of being that we are in is called samsara, confused existence. Again, I refer you to the opening, not even chapter 1 yet, but the opening section of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, where Gampopa talks about what is samsara, what is nirvana. Again, that section is so well laid out, so precise, so clean, and so concise. But everything there, what is samsara, what is nirvana? What is the same with regards to both of these states of being? What is completely different with regards to these 2 states of being? Very clearly laid out in that introduction to the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. You should go back there and look again and again and look for commentaries on that section especially. Really, really important place to go look and try to gain more understanding of what is said there. So samsara is not a place. Samsara is a mode of existence. A mode of existence that, in brief, is a mode of existence that is the result of confusion. And existing in that mode, existing in that way, all that results, all that turns up is what we call dukkha, suffering. And therefore, we want to abandon that. We want to relinquish that. So here, he says, you can relinquish through force, meaning strong determination, and you can relinquish through realization. So first he talks about force. To abandon this mental formation in particular, right? In general, is abandoning samsara. But what is samsara but uncontrolled continuous mental formations? So to abandon mental formations through force is to have a state of mind that upholds a strong commitment a determination to keep the affliction of desire from arising when it has not arisen, and to abandon it using the antidote the moment it turns up. In this same way, do the same with the other two of the three afflictions, namely aversion and delusion, and aspire to attain perfectly complete Buddhahood. So this last part is put in there because, as we learned from earlier parts, if you go on the route of the hearers and the route of the solitary realizers, they are also doing the same thing with regards to the three afflictions. So with regard to the three afflictions, you have to do the same thing, no matter if you take the path of the hearers, the path of the solitary realizers, and the path of the perfect and complete Buddhas. Abandoning, relinquishing the three poisons, the three afflictions, are exactly the same task. Where the difference is, and there is a crucial difference, is those on the path to complete and perfect Buddhahood have to do it with a mind, with an intention, with an aspirations toward achieving that Buddha state for the benefit of all beings. So bodhicitta, what we call bodhicitta, is that crucial difference. More will consider the 3 or 5 afflictions to be like deadly poison. So to say more, it means we have to really regard these 5 or 3. So the 3 we already know, plus 5 would be pride and jealousy. Then the 3 afflictions now become the 5 afflictions. To be like deadly poison. If somebody told you, that is cyanide over there. I think if you walk into a room, somebody says, there is cyanide in this room. You're like, ooh. Or even less deadly, maybe someone says, there is asbestos in this room. Oh, immediately, So do we have that feeling around the 5 afflictions, the 3 afflictions? Probably not yet. But we need to, kind of be on guard. Yeah? Understand that this bottomless and boundless ocean of samsara we drift in arises through the affliction of desire, is made painful through aversion, and that delusion powers both of them. So Kyupa gives a very nice kind of brief way of understanding how the 3 afflictions work. He says, mostly desire gives rise to this thing we call samsara. Then its fault of being painful becomes more obvious when aversion comes in. And both attachment and aversion is powered by ignorance, confusion, delusion. Here, awareness of impermanence acts as the antidote to turning to the 8 worldly concerns or the sense pleasures. So the more we stop ignoring the truth of uncertainty, of impermanence, of change, then the more we will not chase after the 8 worldly concerns, or to be under the power of the 8 worldly concerns and the sense pleasures. Through that, There will be a disinterest in the pleasures of the five senses that is like what tigers or leopards feel when grass is put before them. When there is no longer any desire for these things even in dreams, what more can be said about actually turning to them? Someone who has become a suitable basis like that will turn inward and rest in the meditative absorption of the two kinds of bodhicitta. Ultimate bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta, the two kinds of bodhicitta. In relation to this, this next section here is a little unclear. Not sure what the original Tibetan looks like, but translation is a little hard to grasp. But let's see. In relation to this, ultimate bodhicitta is aroused by following a procedure, which is, in meditation, the kind of meditation based on the teacher's instructions, the guru's instructions. Practice is done with fixation on concreteness. This is not the realization of the ultimate. So here, I'm not sure if the original Tibetan is conveyed. I don't know. Because then the next one, it says, relative bodhicitta is also practiced with fixation on concreteness. Here, I don't know. Like I said, I don't have the Tibetan, and even if I have the Tibetan, I'm not sure if I can figure it out. But perhaps here it's saying, maybe the English is it's done with fixation on concreteness. I don't think it's saying you should fixate on concreteness, but rather, ultimate bodhicitta is to be directed towards our habit of fixating on concreteness. That means the purpose of bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta, is to dissolve this fixation, is to weaken this fixation, and to ultimately destroy this fixation on concreteness. But then the next line, this is not the realization of the ultimate. Not sure what that is. My interpretation makes the second sentence a little difficult. So, who knows? Then it says, relative bodhicitta is also practiced with fixation on concreteness. If you follow my interpretation, then it's saying, and with relative bodhicitta, it is also meant at targeting, using relative bodhicitta to dissolve, to weaken, and to eventually destroy fixation on concreteness, on substantiality. This is thus the stage where meditative equipoise on the two kinds of bodhicitta is practiced with fixation on concreteness. Meaning the two kinds of bodhicitta is directed at fixation on concreteness. Maybe make a little bit more sense? Yeah. Turning inwards and entering such a meditative absorption will strengthen the mind. Will make your mind strong. As the five senses will no longer follow the five objects, the mind will be restrained like a river is held back by a dam. So this image of a dam holding back a river, the connotation is it needs to have strong determination to hold back this water, to dam up this water, to build up, this kind of control. Remember that here, is focused on using force. using strong determination. The exalted one, Protector Akshobhya, is an example of doing this. Remember, the name Akshobhya means immovable, cannot be moved. He made the aspiration that not for a single moment would an intention based on any of the three afflictions arise in him, and he adhered to it with extremely powerful antidotes. For those with such great commitment, there is nothing they can achieve. But someone who thinks, I am just someone whose actions are all impelled by the three afflictions, I am incapable, has become an upholder of the afflictions. He says, if you have this weak, and so, I'm incapable, I can't do it, then he says, not only are you giving over to the three afflictions, you are now a holder of the afflictions, rather than the holder of Buddha Dharma. This is playing with the words, holder. Now you are the holder of the three afflictions. But in this example of Akshobhya, in the beginning, when he first aroused bodhicitta, the exalted one Akshobhya was not yet liberated from the entirety of the binding afflictions either. But in the end, he was successful, meaning don't underestimate yourself. Right? Just as Akshobhya, when he made that aspiration, he could not, be free from the three afflictions yet. But he dared to make that commitment. And then through this kind of determination, he achieved Buddhahood. And in fact, his name when he was Buddha is the immovable one, Akshobhya. Now, abandoning samsara through realization. Ultimate bodhicitta will be realized if, after abandoning the five sense pleasures, meaning you have become disinterested in the five sense pleasures, two aspects are brought together. So first, you need to have some degree, some measure of freedom from being dragged around by chasing after sense pleasures. Then 2 points, he says: devotion to the Guru and great energetic vigor in the meditative equipoise of absorption in the two kinds of bodhicitta. Now first, what is the essence of ultimate bodhicitta? The Hevaja Tantra says, by nature there are no form and no seer, no sound and no hearer, no smell, no smeller, no taste and no taster, no touch and no toucher, and no mind and no mental factors. Meaning, subject objects of the six senses, they completely do not exist intrinsically independently. They arise temporarily and interdependently. And that is ultimate bodhicitta. In other words, what we commonly call emptiness, shunyata. For someone who has realized the nature of mind in this way, realized the nature of their minds in this, to be like this, to be empty of intrinsic nature, then samsara is abandoned and the path to nirvana is actualized. However, for those who have realized the nature of mind in this way, but haven't realized formation, the ensuing consciousness is such that afflictions and the various conceptual thoughts arise with fixation on concreteness. So this part is a little bit more difficult. So now, so first of all, before we try to understand, before I try to give you some idea of what I think it is, first of all, I think we have to step back a little. there are these kinds of discussions that you can find in the Tibetan Buddhist world. It's staggering, the amount of written material that has been produced by the Tibetan people in the last 1500 years or so, at least around there. 7th, 8th century Buddhism appears or starts to turn up in Tibet, 8th century. So 1200 years or so. It's a staggering amount of literature has been produced. In fact, I remember at the University of Virginia when I was a graduate student, and they were just starting this, what they call the Digital Humanities Project. This project to digitize for the humanities, that area of study. So that covered then religious studies, history, and all that. And in that project, which also, because of the Buddhist studies program at the university, so the Tibetan material quickly became one of the main focus, because at that time the University of Virginia had one of the largest collections of Tibetan texts. Maybe now not the case now, but at that time at least outside of Tibet in the West. So I remember during that time, because it's an interdisciplinary field, and when they started to compare, the textual production of Tibet compared to other cultures in other parts of the world, it way exceeds most other cultures, if not all other cultures, right? Considering the amount of textual. So to this day, manuscripts are discovered that has no other copy anywhere. Tibetan manuscripts. And this is even more amazing, surprising, shocking, when literacy wasn't universal in Tibet. It was quite limited. So the small percentage of the population that were literate was very prolific. So among the different types of texts and literature produced, there are definitely a genre that discuss these material using terms. These are technical terms: formation, as in mental formation, samskara; subsequent consciousness or ensuing consciousness. These are technical terms. So there are material especially grounded in the Abhidharma, for example, and from the Abhidharma into the study of logic, into the study of Yogacara and Chittamatra traditions. There are very detailed debates and discussions, theoretical debates and discussion, based on mastering the full extent of texts available. There was a very strong, robust tradition of monastic scholars studying these subjects in what you and I maybe today would call based on researching textual sources. Primarily the Kangyur, the translated words of the Buddha, and the Tengyur, the translated treatises of the great Indian masters. And some of those textbooks have been translated into English. Now here, in this context, if you take this section, right, and you compare with that kind of writings and literature, you will say, oh, over here, what we're looking at, it's so vague. Whereas over here, these monastic scholars who spend time, researching, bringing together all these texts, they're so detailed. In fact, maybe for many of us, so detailed that we like give up, But if you are good with details, you're not intimidated by details. When you look at these other kinds of writings, you'll find it very satisfying. Oh yes, this text says this. Oh, in this sutra, the Buddha said that. Then over there in the commentary, in the treatise, an Indian Maha scholar, a great scholar, monk, Nagarjuna or Dhammakirti, or wrote this and further defined that, and you can see, very kind of systematic treatment of the relationship between these subsequent consciousness, main consciousness, all these words. Compared to here is like, oh, what is going on? What is going on here is he's speaking to people who have direct experience of their minds. They do not have necessarily all the textual knowledge, all the references, all the footnotes, all the endnotes. But they have direct experience of what is being talked about here. So in part it's challenging for us to read because we have not tasted these subtle states of mind that he is talking about here. So that's also the challenge for translators to try to translate this. It's really hard. Because in some ways you may even say Kyopa is speaking in a very cryptic way, but I don't think it is based on wanting to be cryptic. Then what's the point of even teaching? But he sounds to the translators and now to us to be cryptic because we have no access to that level of understanding, because we have not trained and learned about our minds in the way that his original audience had. So he didn't need to say so clearly. You can see later in this section, just here, right, he is referencing also. He says, Gampopa says this. Here I'm telling you, my way of seeing it is like this. So he is giving some comparisons. But he's doing it in such a way that I'm very sure, the audience he was speaking to understood what he is talking about. So that is, I think the nature of that difficulty for the translators to translate this into English, and then for us to wrap our heads around this. So, because of that headache, we will stop here today. Then we dedicate all our collective merit to tomorrow, not such a headache when we actually look at the section, So we have to see what our collective good merit is, you know. But he already said, you know, he says, devotion to the Guru and great energetic vigor in the meditative equipoise of the two absorptions. That's what's needed, he says, you know. Chanchu Semcho Rinpoche Ma Ge Banam Ge Gyurchi Ge Banyam Pa Me Pa Ya Gong Ne Gong Du Bel Wer Shung. Okay.